It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the program today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Joe.
You bet. So let's begin our journey before we get into your work as a spiritual guide and a color consultant by asking you this. 6 years ago, this pandemic changed the world, changed all of us. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you work and live today?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. It's actually very strange because just before hopping on here, I was with a client. We were talking about COVID and the pandemic. I work in spiritual guidance. I'm not a mental health counselor in any means, but I do oftentimes people will find me sometimes due to mental health issues, right? Maybe depression, anxiety. And so, since I'm involved in that world, at least tangentially, I have noticed a large uptick after COVID. I think there was something that happened within people's minds where there maybe was confronting things that were always there, or maybe just not having good coping skills. But I did see in this industry people suffering a bit more, whether it's from depression, anxiety, and the like. Um, Personally, I flourished in COVID. And I think that has to do with maybe some of the pre work that I had done with myself. I live in outside Boston, so I have wonderful access here to like nature, to walks. We were shut down without being really shut down. So I was able to just go on long walks in the woods, which was fabulous for me. My day-to-day life now, if I get a 15-minute walk at noon, I'm happy. So, and that obviously I could make that change in my schedule, but it's easier said than done. And there was this way that I kind of was able to take a really large breath during COVID. And I do feel very privileged having that experience because I work regularly with people who really didn't have that at all. And again, to some degree, I think that had to do with the practices that I had already established for myself. I've been a spiritual guide now for 6 years. So just before COVID is when I became a certified spiritual guide. But 4 years or 5 years, even prior to that, I had been doing intense spiritual self study for myself and offering energy healing. So I had a lot of practices, a lot of tools that I could fall back on for my mental and emotional well being, meditation, energetic rituals. And then I personally have tons of creative projects. I love art, I love to paint. And I finally had time to do those
Yeah.
things. And in fact, I couldn't really spend my time any other way. That was the best way for me to spend my time. So personally, I know this is not the case for many, but I flourished during that time and it was a wonderful time for me.
And I think a lot of us thought after COVID, the existential crisis of what was going on was going to go away. But America has become a stressful cauldron of war and anti-immigration and just horrific things that are happening. Are you noticing that people are getting more and more to spiritual crossroads and kind of that existential moment in their existence?
Absolutely, 100%. And in a way, that's what brought me anyway for my to be. So before I started a spiritual practice, I had my personal practice, right? So I was a seeker myself. That's how I came to be here. And what led me to seek was constant stress. I was in a constant state of anxiety and feeling like the world was this chaotic place. That was me prior to COVID. That was me prior to 2026. That was me in when probably it was very calm people for time for other people in like 2015. I was going through that dark night of the soul, so to speak. And that's what led me on this path to find tools that I could self-regulate without being always in reaction to the crazy that was my life. And now, fast forward 11 years, I'm seeing people, there's very real day to day life experiences that people are having. And it's like to the extent that we're not able to shift the outer world, we need to find tools to manage ourselves within, whether that's to create boundaries or distance ourselves from unhealthy relationships, or perhaps like limit the amount of social media we consume or things like that. But more than that, we need to be able to manage our inner state, to manage our mind, our emotional activity, that we're not constantly in reaction to what's happening, because otherwise, my Lord, the roller coaster does not stop. And in fact, it might be getting harder.
Yeah, for sure. So if I put you in front of 13-year-olds at career day right now and you had explained your day job to those kids, how do you synthesize your work to make sense to their brains?
Yeah, I love that. And in fact, that's something I talk about is I didn't know that this was a career you could have. You know, when I was 12, 13, and I was thinking, what do I want to be when I grow up? A spiritual guide was nowhere on my radar. I was a scientist, so I was basically an atheist. I didn't even really believe, so to speak, in this work, not let alone know that it was real. So the way that I describe it, I help solve problems that are of a spiritual nature. So a plumber fixes a physical problem in your plumbing. A house painter fixes a physical problem with the paint on your house, and I help people with spiritual problems.
So, what did you want to be at 13? What was your ultimate dream job?
Okay, so I wanted to be an author illustrator,
Uh huh.
and I actually have written and self-published a children's book. So not that I'm a full-time at all, but we have made small steps towards
Yep.
that. I think that was my main thing. And then at some point later on, it was probably more in high school, that's when I started to want to become a scientist. But as a middle school, elementary school student, I wanted to be an author illustrator. I still do love reading. I've always been an avid reader. And as well, as I already mentioned, I love to paint.
So, take me back to your childhood, and what were these foundational seeds or elements, whether conscious or subconscious, that became a part of empiricism and then spirituality and atheism and art and all these things that have transformed and evolved into who you are today?
So, this is all retrospect. In the moment, I didn't have any of this awareness. So, this is the 20 years looking back and going, "Oh, why did I choose those things?" So, my father is in finance, and he's always done finance for biotech startup companies. So, I've spent 7 years in the biotech startup company field. And I think part of it was, it's my dad. And he would always talk about, oh, these scientists, and they were so smart. And so I think for sure that, like, oh, that's what my dad values. Right. And so there was an aspect of me that chose science because, yes, I was good at it. Like, I did have a mind for those things. I was generally curious, but absolutely, I think there was I want to make my dad proud. I want my dad to think I did a good job. I want that stamp of approval for sure. And so part of my spiritual awakening was I got the degree, I started working in biotech, and I just realized this really doesn't have to do with me. That's pretty much, I mean, it's an awesome question. And seeing it in hindsight, obviously, they say it's much easier to see the writing on the wall than when you're in it. But absolutely, it was there. I do believe we make choices in life. It's not that it didn't have anything to do with me, but at the end of the day, it's not really where I wanted to be.
So they say there's a movie where you're either a Beatles person or you're an Elvis person. And I think about spirituality, and I think that you're either somebody that has a level of acumen that's opened up your brain to the spiritual side, and there's others of us that just like for me, I'm hopeful. I I I see the spiritual side like I see travel. I always go into it hopeful, but I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And I think some of us we just don't see it. So how did you get this level of clairvoyance? How did you get this?
Yeah, so I was very much, if whatever track you're on, I was there, and maybe even further, to be perfectly honest. I was to the point of maybe you could call me an agnostic, but I pretty much identified as an atheist, where not only I was pretty sure there's not anything else. And I was not seeking. I was not trying to learn that there was something else. I was like, the doors are closed. We're happy here. It's all good. And what happened was I had a spiritual awakening. So basically, I had done meditation, I had done yoga, but for me, chakras were a metaphor. I didn't think that they were real. I wasn't, I did yoga because I felt good when I did it. I meditated because my mind was this crazy jumble and it helped me calm down. But I wasn't seeking enlightenment. I wasn't trying to have this massive experience. And I did end up having maybe what I would call like a partial Kundalini awakening. If you or some of the listeners might know what that is, where there's a certain way that your chakras open and this energy opens up. And I had a vision, like it was, I had a vision basically of us building all of these sand castles, which are our earthly projects, and that there was like a playfulness to life that I had never experienced. And there was this way of like, oh, well, I could go try and create that and see what happens. Like really as if we were in this sandbox learning experience. the vision ended. I came back down to reality and I started to see my life. And there were all these places in my life where I was so confined and so boxed in by my own personal thoughts about myself, which a lot of them were quite negative, that was really unaware of prior to that. And that's when I started to go, okay. And from that, I could start to feel chakras, which totally was insane to me. I was like, I didn't think that those were real, but I can't describe it any other way. What's happening? And so, midnight Google searches, spiritual awakening, what's it like? Da, 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 reading all the crazy blog posts by people. And you're like, well, some of them sound psychotic. I don't think I'm psychotic, but something's happening. And that's where I found a meditation teacher who then was also a spiritual guide. And it took me 8 months. I wasn't like, sign me up, Scotty. It took me 8 months. I would come every week and meditate. And that was super, super helpful, quieting my mind, just taking a breath each week from the stress and from everything that was going on. And then, 8 months in, I had a relationship that I really cared about end. And that was really, really hard for me, to the point that I said, okay, something's got to change. I can't do something. I can't do that again, because that was really painful. And I have to make a change within me that I don't recreate that ever, ever again. So finally, I came up to this woman. I said, oh, no, you've been talking about this energy healing. Like, let's try it. Okay, let's just see. And I ended up doing it with her, really having like bottom of the barrel expectations, thinking I probably just wasted this money. And I saw changes. I started to paint a lot more. I started to have more joy in my life. I started to express myself differently in my personal friendships and different relationships, and be more, basically stand up for myself in places where I hadn't been standing up for myself. So I kind of went, oh, okay, like let's try the next thing, but it wasn't now I'm going to go be a spiritual guide at all. It was just, okay, that benefited my life, what's the next thing? Okay, that benefited my life, what's the next thing? And slowly, at some point, maybe a couple years in, then I said, okay, all right, this is real. I want to dedicate time and effort to this.
So it was almost like the door to the fun house opened up for you, so to speak,
The
right?
door to the fun house, absolutely, it's a good way to put it.
I mean, were you painting before this happened? Before the spiritual awakening?
So what's really interesting, I majored in biology, but I always had art.
Okay.
And I remember my art teacher in high school, no, sorry, in college, she goes, we had a little show, and she goes, some of this art you could see in a museum. Like, just, she wasn't trying to, like, hype me up or anything. She just was saying, like, some of the quality of this art, I could imagine seeing it in the museum, like a modern art museum. And I don't know, I just didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I could make money that way. Whatever the program running in my mind,
Yep.
even though I always loved it, I was never going to do that. That just wasn't who I was going to be. So for sure, we went into the science. Plus, I was good at science. Like, it's when you get the positive feedback, you're going to keep following it. But so I had put, especially as I went to a master's degree in biology, started working full time, there wasn't time for painting. And more than that, I wasn't going to make money at it. So why should I do it? Right. Like, that's how my mind was working.
Yeah.
I wasn't good enough. I'm not going to make money at it. It's not my career. Why would I dedicate time and energy towards it? Then I did the healing with her, and all of a sudden I started to paint. And it was like this massive creative flow opened up in my life. And this is actually, it's real. And this is the story I tell about the life activation. So within those first 3 months, I painted kind of like a mad woman. Like, I painted like 12 paintings, like super expressive, creative. And I was working at a startup incubator space for biotech. So they have all these like small companies in this building. And they put up a note, the people who manage the building, hey, do you do art? We want to hang some of our clients' art on the walls. And I had just painted like 12 paintings. So I'm like, well, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I do art. And
Yeah.
it was this whole sequence of, I would have never put myself out there and
Yep.
said, yeah, I do. First of all, I wouldn't have had the paintings to do it. So I had the painting. So that was step one.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't have had the confidence to say, oh, you art.
Yeah.
Yeah, my art up there, right?
Huh?
So then all of a sudden, 9 of my paintings are hanging in a Cambridge, Massachusetts startup incubator space with all these other companies of, tech funding and biotech and da, da. And somebody buys one of my paintings
Wow.
for the first time ever. I
Wow.
sold a painting. And that was all in 3 months.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
You know,
That's
like,
great.
yeah, it was crazy. It was literally beyond my dreams, right?
Yeah.
Like I just was astounded by the sequence of things.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's serendipity. So, who's been your hero? Who's been that inspirational force that's allowed you to evolve and migrate to this place that you're at today?
That's a wonderful question. So it's a woman who, she's famous in my world, but probably not famous in a big stage way. Her name's Martina Coogan. She lives in London. She's been doing similar work for, 30 odd years. And her, I don't even know what it is. Like the first time I met her, I just was like, wow, you get me. Almost with very little words exchanged, I just felt like, oh, I've been understood. I'm seen. And I just feel like whatever this woman's doing, how can I help you? Like whatever you're up to, I want to know about it because just something within her, it's like a generosity of her spirit or an ability to just understand and love you on a level that it's like we're all seeking, but we find so infrequently. And there's not even, I could try and I have tried to put it down into words and I struggle with that part of it because it's not even something I could like, write you down a little list of, but you know, she just, she saw in me what I couldn't see in me
Yeah.
and was somehow able to nurture that part of me that there it's not that we talk even all the time but just at key moments, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about this thing but a big part of me doesn't think I can do it, and she just goes, oh yeah, thank you, oh, I would put you, not only would I say you could do that, I could see you over here doing this other thing that's like even bigger than what I had suggested, and I'm like, oh, you would, and so step by step by step, um just guiding me very reassuringly, very supportively, nurturing. And, but the biggest part of it is just seeing in me what I yet couldn't see in myself
And
in a
we
big
all,
way.
yeah, we all need that. We all need
Oh
that
my
one person
gosh.
that sees us for who we are. So, do you believe in like a monotheism? Are you since you've gone from the agnostic atheism, or is there a belief that you have in a higher power and a deity?
Yeah, so I believe in God.
Yeah,
Now, that was a big kind of turning point for me, but still, I wouldn't call it, it's not like the Catholic God. So here,
sure.
I'll say the word God, but then we all have like, well, what is God?
Uh-huh.
Because we all have different interpretations of what that means. And so I'm saying the word God, and I do think it's still not really it is monotheistic kind of, but at the same time it's not because I think that we're all part of that God.
Yeah.
That we're an aspect of that God. So
Mhm.
does that mean that it's just the one God? It's like on the one level it is the one God, but then
Sure.
it's not the one God because we're all part of that
Uh-huh.
energy structure. But absolutely that's been a big key for me, and honestly overcoming my own self-doubts and sense of limitation is like there is a higher power, there is a benevolent good being that is looking out for me, and I'm taking risks, but those risks are supported,
Yeah.
which doesn't mean I don't skin my knees,
Sure. Yep.
even a kid learning how to ride its bike, it's a good thing, but you fall down and you skin your knees and it doesn't mean that mom and dad weren't watching, but it's just part of the growing pains of life. But I do believe for sure that there's a higher power, that I'm connected to, and that when I work in alignment with God, that's the highest and best road that I can walk for my life.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You walk into a room and there's a film projector and you click play and a 60-second highlight reel comes up on the wall. Would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That would be like, who? What is she up to? So absolutely not. No.
Any advice?
For my 19-year-old self, my 18
Yeah.
year old self,
Yeah.
I think honestly, the biggest thing I would say is like, you're doing good.
Yeah.
You're doing good. Just keep going. You're doing good.
What are you the proudest of? What are you the happiest about in that 60-second highlight reel?
Um, I guess the resiliency and endurance to just keep going. Like I'm talking about the skinned knees, I've skinned my knees for sure, many time over. And it's just getting back up.
Yeah.
That resiliency of my own, will to just keep going and getting back up. And through that, that's where if you could call anything a success, it's because I just got back up again.
So can anybody train themselves to get to that spiritual place where you start seeing things around you? I mean, can you
Yeah.
relax? It's kind of like those 90s paintings with all the dots where you like, right? You relax your
Yeah,
retina
the
and then
magic eye.
yes. Is
Yeah,
it?
and in fact, I teach spiritual intuition. I teach exactly that, how to open up the senses. But it's much more than that because I joke. It's not a joke at all. But for example, Buddha, we would consider him a very impressive spiritual teacher. Somebody might even call him like a master of light, which is kind of just to say that he's like a really highly evolved human or spiritual being. And it's not that Buddha is like writing about his psychic experiences. You know what I mean? Like Buddha's teaching about the mastery of the mind, or
Yeah,
Jesus, like again, some would call him like a very highly evolved spiritual teacher. He's not talking about like, oh, and then I saw this like psychic phenomenon, da da da. No, he's teaching about loving people,
yeah,
right? So we can have amazing spiritual gifts and they don't have to look like being a psychic. They can look like being a really, really good human who knows how to like live life well.
yeah,
And in fact, that's what I would say is kind of the best outcome. Yeah, sure, your psychic senses are going to open up. That's part of it, and that it can be very helpful. But the core piece of it is that you just live life better.
yeah,
You live life that's more aligned with who you really are. You're living a higher quality life with better relationships. Maybe you're taking care of your physical body a little bit better, or able to break through some limits around, income things or whatever it might be. But like, that's really what we want, right? People want to make their physical day-to-day life better. And so as the, intuition or psychic awareness helps that, sure, that's great. But, if you have amazing psychic gifts, but you can't pay your bills, like let's work on the paying the bill part. You know what I mean?
yep. I get it. I'm a Libra. That Libratic balance is huge. So, Julie, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you in all these different bubbles, but you run the show. You're the driving force behind who you are. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, I love that. So part of the classes that I teach, I sometimes introduce as the mystery of I am. Because I do believe I am is a full sentence.
Yeah.
And in one day, I am a teacher, I am a lover, I am a sister, I am a daughter, I'm a mother, whatever, I am, fill in the blank. But then that key, I am. I am bringing light to this world.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am.
I love it. So if anybody's ready for the next step, they want to have questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Thanks, Joe. So yeah, my website is www.spiritualstudies-institute.com. You can find a free intuition handbook there if you're interested in cultivating your intuition like we were talking about. But as well, you can find my calendar, my contact information. And if I'm not in the area where you live, I have lots of colleagues all over the United States, actually all over the globe, that I can connect you to if there's somebody who could serve you better in a local community.
Okay, wonderful. I will put all of these links in the show notes. This has been absolutely wonderful, revelatory. Thank you so much for taking a minute out and best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.